What if I told you there's a pitch so unpredictable it defies physics and leaves even the best hitters guessing? This week, we're diving into the wild, weird, and wonderful world of the knuckleball, an innovation that changed pitching forever. Stick around because this is one ride you don't want to miss.
Hey, baseball fans. Welcome to Rounders, your baseball history podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lambert. Get ready to step into the time machine with us, and we're not just talking stats and scores. We're digging into the heart and soul of the players, teams, and countries that have made this a global sport. From the underdog stories to those jaw dropping moments, Rounders is your front seat to the epic journey of baseball. So grab a seat in the digital bleachers, relax, and let's swing for the fences together.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to New Year, New Episode. Rounders is back for 2025, and it's great to be here with you. I'm your host, Jeff Lambert. Before we jump into our episode today, we're going to be doing the second installment in a ongoing series that I've called Baseball Innovations. And the point of this series is where each episode is going to explore some sort of groundbreaking advancement that has moved the game of baseball forward. So for this episode, we're going to be talking about the knuckleball. Now, we did one episode before this in the innovation series. It's called Baseball Innovations, the batting helmet. So if you'd like to go back and check out that episode, you can go ahead and check the show notes. I'll make sure to put a link there. And we're looking to do more of these in the future. I've started doing this setup of ongoing series based on different things. So for instance, we have the team autopsies where we look at baseball clubs that are no longer with us. We take a look at top nines for lists of things like unbreakable records or things you didn't know about a specific player. Another recent one we started called the Foul Play Files, which is focusing on unsolved mysteries or crimes that occurred with professional baseball players. So I'm trying to break these up into series where you can go back and see similar episodes. So we're going to keep going with the innovations today with the knuckleball. I hope you enjoy it. Let's go ahead and jump into this topic. The knuckleball really isn't a pitch, it's more of a puzzle. Because unlike traditional pitches that rely on spin to dictate their movement, the knuckleball kind of just floats to the plate with almost no spin at all. So that lack of rotation makes it completely unpredictable because you have air currents sending it darting around and dancing in ways that really leaves batters baffled. And it also is a problem for catchers, leaves them scrambling because they don't know where it's going to end up. Sometimes even the pitcher is wondering where that is going to land once they let it go. Because of that unpredictability, the knuckleball is a rare and specialized weapon in baseball. It's not a pitch that anybody can master. It takes an incredible amount of patience and precision to know how to throw one effectively. So, for those who have perfected the knuckleball, it can turn even the most confident hitters into really frustrated guessers because of its quirky, unpredictable nature. And it can be a true game changing pitch for those who take the mound. So let's start our journey by looking at the origins of the knuckleball. Where did it come from? So the knuckleball traces its roots back to the early 1900s with a player named Eddie Chacot. Eddie Chacot was known as Knuckles, that was his nickname, and he's often credited with the invention and the popularization of the knuckleball pitch. Now, Chacot, for my Chicago White Sox fans, he played for the team. He was actually involved in the 1918 fixing scandal. Chacot was a guy who was always on the hunt for some sort of edge, and he started experimenting with gripping the baseball in different ways. He started using his knuckles to create a pitch that would move the ball unpredictably. So he worked on that more and more, and he quickly realized that he'd stumbled onto something special. He found a pitch that seemed to float and dip and dart in different directions, which was really frustrating for hitters because it left them flailing and frustrated. Now, I have no doubt in my mind, even though sources don't necessarily suggest this, that Chacot probably picked up the rudimentary basics of this pitch from other guys that he played with. I'm sure the knuckleball was around in some shape or form in rudimentary fashion before he decided to like really work on making it more of a precision delivery and using it throughout different games. So he was really the guy we could say that popularized it in the big leagues. And his success with the knuckleball started to inspire other pitchers. For instance, another pitcher named Ed Summers. decided to also start experimenting with this knuckle pitch, and he refined it by starting to grip the ball with his fingertips instead of using it with his knuckles. So we see an evolution of the knuckleball early on in the 1900s. So this variation of using your fingertips became the foundation for how most modern knuckleballers throw that pitch. So Ed Summers, I guess you could say, really moved it along. So you got Chakotay, you got Summers. These innovations didn't just give them edges on the mound, it really opened the door for one of baseball's quirkiest and really enduring pitching techniques. Now, as a side note, one thing I was really interested in while researching this episode was, did people start calling it the knuckleball? Was it something that Chakotay came up with? Where was the origin of the actual name? And that I could find was inconclusive. You do have Chakotay, whose nickname was Knuckles, so it probably originated somewhat from that. But then you also saw pitchers, refining it and really dealing with the fact that the pitch would knuckle once it was thrown. It was erratic, it was side to side. So that wobbling action, I think, also contributed to giving that pitch its unique identity. So was it more the person that was throwing it that popularized it, or was it how the ball moved, how we came to the name knuckleball? That I couldn't necessarily conclude for you, but I'm throwing out both options for your consideration. Let's talk about early reactions to the knuckleball. How did players react to it once this started to become more commonplace in professional games? So batters were somewhat accustomed to being able to predict pitch trajectories based on the spin. And then you have this pitch that really caused them to really flail at a ball that seemed to have a mind of its own. So we see some quotes start to pop up about this pitch whenever it was used. You had hitting coach Charlie Lau, who, by the way, was a coach for the Orioles, the Royals, the Yankees, the White Sox, the Athletics, and he also wrote a very popular book during his time during the 60s and 70s called Lau's on Hitting by Charlie Lau. Great name, huh? This is what he had to say about the knuckleball. I think it really is a great insight into how players felt about it. He said, quote, "There are two theories on hitting the knuckleball. Unfortunately, neither of them works," end quote. Now, in addition to batters being frustrated by the popularization of this pitch, you had catchers facing their own unique set of challenges too, because you have that unpredictable movement of the knuckleball, and it made it notoriously difficult to field cleanly. Bob Uecker, the announcer from the Major League movies, who also was a catcher during his professional career and caught for knuckleballer Phil Niekro, once stated in an interview, quote, "The way to catch a knuckleball is to wait until it stops rolling and then pick it up," end quote. So this unpredictability, it led to an increase in passed balls for catchers. It led to an increase in wild pitches sometimes from the pitcher. So it added an extra layer of complexity to the game. And that erratic behavior from the pitch not only disrupted the rhythm of hitters, but it really demanded heightened focus from everybody involved. So you've got the pitcher and the catcher trying to be able to keep a focus on this in addition to the hitter. And I think it really altered the dynamics of what could be expected when a pitcher was on the mound with this weapon in their arsenal. So now let's transition over to the part that I think is most important. We see this innovation of the knuckleball. Who were those players that popularized it and made the knuckleball such a feared tool on the mound? After Eddie Chacot and Ed Summers, we see pitchers like Phil Niekro and Hoyt Wilhelm truly master and popularize this pitch. Let's start off with Phil Niekro, who is affectionately known as Knucksy during his 24-season career in Major League Baseball. He spent most of those seasons with the Atlanta Braves. So, this primarily knuckleball pitcher racked up 318 career wins during his time. That makes him the only knuckleball pitcher to achieve 300 victories. And remember, 24 seasons on the mound. His longevity and his effectiveness on the mound were largely attributed to his use of the knuckleball, which would put less strain on the arm to throw it. This is a guy that pitched well into his late 40s. So his contributions to the game were recognized, and he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1997. First knuckleballer in the Hall. And quick side note on Eddie Chacot, he is not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. As I mentioned previously, he was, well, to give you more details, he was permanently banned from baseball due to his involvement in that Black Sox scandal, 1919. So he was ineligible for Hall of Fame consideration, even though he was a dominant pitcher during his time. And of course, was the guy who really popularized and started the movement towards refining and using that pitch more. So we've got Niekro. Let's talk about Hoyt Wilhelm, another Hall of Famer. He was a trailblazer in his own right. So he debuted in the majors at the age of 29 years old, much later on in life than a lot of other pitchers. He became the first relief pitcher ever inducted into the Hall of Fame, and his knuckleball was that primary weapon he used to baffle hitters and, unfortunately, his own teammates, his catchers. Wilhelm had another very long career. It spanned 21 seasons, and he became the first player to appear in 1,000 games. So his success is being able to come in following the starter and using the knuckleball in a bullpen role paved the way for future generations of pitchers, not only to use that relief role as a really critical part of the game, but also, again, to show the power of the knuckleball to be able to change the outcome. So Niekro and Wilhelm, they showcased that knuckleball potential. They proved that they were willing to put in the dedication and skill to master it. And this unconventional pitch could really lead to extraordinary success on the mound if you took the time to master it. So if these guys were the harbingers of the knuckleball, do we have any modern practitioners? And the answer is yes, we do, to some extent. So we have guys like Tim Wakefield and R.A. Dickey who have used the knuckleball pitch in the modern era. So I'm going to talk about both of those. And I want to start with Tim Wakefield. He's one of my favorite all time baseball players, most of his career with the Red Sox. He had a very interesting journey to knuckleball mastery. So he was drafted as a first baseman originally by the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then he transitioned to pitching after being advised that his future in baseball was going to be limited if he stuck to a position player role. So he found the knuckleball. He embraced it and he debuted as a pitcher in 1992. Took a lot of time for him to work on and practice and master this pitch, but he makes the transition and he starts to use it. He doesn't find immediate success. But when he ends up going to the Red Sox, that's when he truly made his mark because he spent 17 years with the team and he was a key part of that rotation every year. He had this unpredictable pitch. Batters hated seeing him as the upcoming guy that they were going to have to face. He became a cornerstone of that Red Sox rotation. Like I mentioned, he was a guy you could count on to go out there and make the game competitive. So that resilience and adaptability that he used to be able to start using the knuckleball pitch, he helped the Red Sox win World Series titles in 2004 and 2007. And by the end of his career, he had amassed 200 wins. 186 of those happened in a Boston uniform, which is third in franchise history. In addition to Tim Wakefield, in terms of modern day knuckleballers, let's talk about R.A. Dickey as well. So, Dickey's another guy. He struggled to find success with traditional pitching, the role that he entered into the league with, and he decides to switch to using the knuckleball. And that was a decision for him, just like Tim Wakefield, that revitalized his career. So in 2012, he was a member of the New York Knicks. This is when he really delivered his first standout season after learning the knuckleball. He achieved a 20-6 record with a 2.73 ERA, and he led the National League with 230 strikeouts. And that season as the knuckleball pitcher in the league led him to the National League Cy Young Award that year, and that made him the first knuckleball pitcher to receive that honor. Now, I want to transition to talking a little bit about the specific challenges and adjustments that have been made in baseball once the knuckleball became more popular. I also want to talk about the decline of its usage, which we're seeing in the 21st century, unfortunately. Before we get there, though, let's just take a quick break for the seventh inning stretch. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. It's a new year, and I've been thinking a lot about what it means to build up my mental wealth. For me, it's about creating small, everyday habits that help me handle life's challenges just a little bit better, whether it's improving my sleep or staying focused or managing that daily stress. And that's where our old friend Magic Mind has come in. I've been using this product for almost a year now, and they recently sent me their new bundle, the focus shots and the sleep shots. And I've been using them for about a week now, and they've become an even better tool in my routine. Those focus shots in the morning have been a game changer for staying clear and sharp when I'm heading off to my teaching job without that usual caffeine crash that I was getting from energy drinks. Sometimes I'll even drink one before recording an episode of Rounders, and it definitely helps with my ability to focus on the task at hand. And at night, the sleep shots that they came out with, they help me wind down in a way that just feels natural and it gives me deeper, more restful sleep. Now, right now, Magic Mind is offering 45% off their 24-hour bundle exclusively for you, my listeners. So just head to www.magicmind.com/roundersjan. Again, that's Rounders JAN to try it out. Make 2025 the year you invest in your mental wealth just like me. I promise you it's worth it. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Happy that you're sticking with me. We're talking about baseball innovations, the knuckleball. We've discussed briefly about who popularized it, made it a thing. We've talked about some of the early reactions to it. We've talked about who popularized it in terms of both guys that started using it and relying on it and becoming successful with it, and then the modern practitioners of the knuckleball. Let's go ahead and transition over to talking about. I want to look at each area of who has to be involved in the knuckleball pitch and just really think about how it changed the game because we are talking about innovations here. So let's start with the catcher. Catching a knuckleball is not an easy task, mainly because it's unpredictable. It has this fluttering movement, and even the most seasoned catchers can look foolish trying to be able to catch this pitch if they're not used to it. So, because of this, we saw teams start to turn to specialized catchers and equipment to be able to make knuckleball pitchers successful. So, we had guys like Doug Mirabelli. He played for the Red Sox and specifically caught for Tim Wakefield whenever he took the mound. And he became one of the first knuckleball catchers that we saw who would really focus on mastering that art of receiving this pitch. So, knuckleball catchers became in demand in the late 90s and early 2000s, and they would have to even use these special equipment pieces that were made for them to be able to better catch a knuckleball. So, these oversized mitts with a larger pocket, and they were used to better corral that unpredictable ball, started to become sold and used by knuckleball catchers. So, All Star, popular equipment manufacturer, came out with a 35-inch mitt that provided extra surface area that knuckleball catchers could use to be able to handle these pitches that were incoming. And it wasn't just the catchers, there was also a real challenge for batters who had to adjust to trying to hit this pitch that had a very erratic movement to it. So, to counteract that unpredictability of the knuckleball, we saw hitting coaches start to adopt and implement specific strategies that batters needed to use when they saw a knuckleballer coming up on the schedule. So, one common approach that was used was that batters were required during batting practice to focus on maintaining a center of gravity and keeping balance for longer than they would for a regular pitch, because they would have to sit back and wait longer for that to arrive before committing to a swing so they could track the ball's movement for a longer period of time. And this was a tough adjustment for a lot of players to make because remember, your job is to try and see that ball coming out of the pitcher's hand to be able to predict what's coming and be able to adjust your timing accordingly. But with the knuckleball, even the pitcher doesn't know where it's going to land a lot of times. So you have to sit back and wait and be a little bit more patient to see which way it's going to drop before committing to a swing. So we saw an adjustment in the approach of being able to handle a knuckleball pitcher and to adjust your batting stance and to be able to adjust your timing. And let's not forget the psychological aspect of facing a knuckleball. Because of that unpredictability, players had to really lock in mentally to be able to handle this pitch at the plate because it would cause this increase in hesitation and uncertainty. Joe Torre, famous manager for the New York Yankees as well as an MLB player, he had said once, quote, "You don't catch a knuckleball, you defend against it," end quote. I think that's a great perspective to think about from the hitter's point of view. And finally, I want to talk about the pitching science behind the knuckleball to consider as well for the people that were throwing it. There was a great quote from Willie Stargell where he had said, quote, "Throwing a knuckleball for a strike is like throwing a butterfly with hiccups across the street into your neighbor's mailbox," end quote. Just to give you kind of an insight into the mindset of those who had to throw it, it was not an easy thing. And while there was stress to consider from the pitcher, having to put in all that extra time to be able to master it, one of the benefits of becoming a knuckleball pitcher, as I alluded to earlier, was that it was surprisingly easy on the pitcher's arm because throwing a knuckleball didn't require that same velocity or force that it would take to throw a fastball or a slider. And that meant far less strain on both the shoulder and the elbow. And this is why we saw a pattern of knuckleballers tending to have remarkably long careers. I mean, think about it. Let's put them just side by side. Phil Niekro pitched until he was 48 years old. Tim Wakefield racked up 20 seasons in the big leagues. Hoyt Wilhelm threw over 1,000 games across 21 seasons. So for these pitchers, the knuckleball wasn't just a pitch, it was a ticket to longevity. And because of that benefit, and also because of this pitch being such a powerful weapon to be able to use in games, we saw the knuckleball rise in popularity with each passing decade during the 1900s. So I think this culminated during the 1940s. During the 1945 season, for instance, the Washington Senators, they employed a pitching rotation that included four knuckleballers. You had Dutch Leonard, Johnny Niggling, Mickey Hafner, and Roger Wolf. They all collectively achieved 60 complete games and 60 wins for the team, who finished in second place that year. And the Senators had mostly a rough existence during their time. I did an episode on them if you're interested in learning more about that club. But they were the ones that I think really showed that, like, when we look at history, the knuckleball had reached a point of very high popularity, and it was right around the 1940s. And this popularity continued into the 1960s and 70s. For instance, during the 1970 season, we saw seven knuckleballer pitchers, prominent knuckleballer pitchers, combined for 47 wins and 44 saves. That was the high point in terms of the knuckleball's usage. But unfortunately, since the 1970s, we have seen a significant decline in Major League Baseball. I mean, even if we look at the modern era, I could point to Dickey, I could point to Wakefield, but unfortunately, they've really been the majority of what we've seen for this pitch. So, why has this occurred? Well, as we talked about, mastering the knuckleball is notoriously challenging. It requires years of dedication, and there's no guarantee of success that you're going to be able to be accurate with it. R.A. Dickey, who we had talked about, he noted one time in an interview that it took him over a year just to grasp the fundamentals. So, here we are, we've arrived in modern times. We're in an era where scouts and teams prioritize velocity. And that slower knuckleball doesn't really fit into the mold of what we've seen of the power pitcher. I think that's really dominated today's game. But it's not just that, it's not just analytics, but it's also some other factors that have caused the knuckleball to, I think, not be able to maintain its popularity. Number one, there's a lack of knowledgeable coaches that exist. When you have fewer pitchers throwing the knuckleball, there's a corresponding decline in the amount of people that can teach how to be able to throw and refine that pitch. And that lack of mentorship made it really daunting, I think, for a lot of younger players to be able to take on the knuckleball and use it as a part of their pitch arsenal. Tim Wakefield once mentioned when pitching for the Red Sox that he felt isolated due to the rarity of other pitchers that really understood what he was doing. So, just a lack of being able to find someone to be able to teach you and to master this pitch has become an issue for younger pitchers wanting to take this on. And then I'm just going to go back to the analytics. I think sabermetrics really ruined the knuckleball's usage in the modern game because we see such an emphasis on analytics and data driven decision making. And there's a preference to wanting to favor pitchers that can throw stuff that's quantified and predictable. And because the knuckleball is inherently unpredictable, it doesn't align well with that approach. And that's led teams, I think, to favor more conventional pitching strategies that gives them more measurable consistency, which the knuckleball is not and will not provide. Despite the drop in usage of the knuckleball, we cannot deny the cultural and historical impact that this pitch has made. We saw pitchers who didn't have blazing fastballs or nasty sliders have a chance to be able to carve out long and incredible careers. And it showed that success in baseball wasn't always about overpowering your opponents. The knuckleball proved that sometimes doing things a little differently could lead to greatness. And I think fans have loved it historically watching knuckleball pitchers. There's something mesmerizing about watching a knuckleball flutter towards the plate and just move in ways that defies logic. If you were lucky enough to see guys like Niekro and Wilhelm or Tim Wakefield and R.A. Dickey pitch, just to be able to go and see them throw that oddball art form, it drew crowds. It was just an exciting thing. There's a knuckleball pitcher on the mound to be able to see, to be able to go and see what this strange pitch might do every time they let it go. But overall, I think the knuckleball, it wasn't just a tool, it was an identity for these pitchers. It became who they were. And they became these little cult heroes of the game. The guy that would come up and throw this mystical pitch. So even though the knuckleball has faded from the modern game, I think its legacy endures. And I do hope we remember that the knuckleball isn't just something that innovated the game, it's also something that can remind us of a time when baseball, and we go back to this periodically, baseball's a game of ingenuity. There's always more than one way to succeed in this sport, and the knuckleball really embodies that. I want to encourage you, if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to listen to our other innovations episode about the batting helmet, how that was popularized, how the different iterations of it as we went through history. And if you have ideas for other innovation episodes you'd like to hear about, send me an email, hit me up on social media. I love hearing from you. And I want to thank you for making this a part of your week. So many podcasts, so many media options out there. The fact that you make this a part of your rotation really means a lot to me, and I thank you for it. So I will see you next week. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy. Rounders, A History of Baseball in America is hosted by Jeffrey Lambert and produced by Shaker Road Media. A special thanks to our premium subscribers who give just $1.25 a week to help grow this show. Our starting 9 supporters who have chosen our highest support level include Nathan Halverson and Neil Townsend. A special thanks to you. Sign up at www.rounders.substack.com to get our free bonus show, more photos and videos of our topic material, and support this show financially if you are able. Thanks for your support, and remember, there are only 2 seasons, winter and baseball.